Leanne Sabine, who also concealed the mummified remains of her husband John in a communal shed, died aged 74 last October after fighting cancer. His body, still wearing his Mark Spencer pajamas, was found when one of Sabine's friends opened the wrapping, which she had been told contained a medical skeleton. Over the years, Sabine had claimed she had killed her husband and hinted that the skeleton could have been real, but her friends thought she was joking. She continued to claim his pension and put it into their joint account. John Sabine, an accountant, was 67 when he was last seen alive in 1997 at the couple's home in the village of Beddoe, near Pontypridd in South Wales. DCI Gareth Morgan told an inquest in Aberdare that DNA analysis confirmed the body was his. Morgan said, "It is my view that Lee Sabine probably killed John Sabine and wrapped up his body. There was no evidence to suggest anyone else knew of his death." A post-mortem carried out by forensic pathologist Dr. Richard Jones found the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. He said the heavy stone frog, which the couple had kept by their bed, had a protruding eye and hind leg that lined up with the fractures. Jones said the way the body had been wrapped meant it was well preserved through chemical mummification. It was so well preserved that tests showed Mr. Sabine had drunk alcohol before his death, but would have been below the drink drive limit. The inquest was told the couple emigrated to New Zealand in the 60s before returning to Britain in the 80s, leaving their 5 children behind. They had signed a joint tenancy for the flat a few weeks before Mr. Sabine's last sighting, but his name was removed a year later. A few months before she died, Lee Sabine told a hairdresser, "People are going to talk about me after I have gone. I could be famous." When the hairdresser asked why, she replied, "Because of the body in the bag." Sabine used to tell her neighbor, Michelle James, that she had a medical skeleton she had bought while training to be a nurse. The pair joked about it, and when James suggested it could be real, Sabine replied, "You never know." James said, "She kept on about it a lot." Shortly before her death, Sabine asked James to help move it from the garden shed to the attic. After she died, James opened the packaging, intending to use what she thought was a medical skeleton for a practical joke, but contacted the police when she realized they were real remains. Gareth Bishop, a police community support officer, called to the house after the discovery, described a strong, rotting smell, like from a compost bin. The body was found 25 days after Lee Sabine died. Witnesses told the inquest that when she spoke of her husband, she claimed he was abusive and a womanizer and had left home. Mary West, a street pastor and executor of Mrs. Sabine's will, said she span a myth about her life. West said, "She had stories of winning a modeling contract in Australia, a glamorous singing career, and tales of her husband's affairs." Her friend Liz Chalkley, said Sabine, who also went by her middle name, once told her she had killed her husband with the frog, but she had not believed her. Chalkley added, "The problem with Anne was you never knew if she was telling the truth or not." The Glamorgan Valley's coroner, Andrew Barkley, recorded a verdict of unlawful killing. He said, "These were terrible circumstances. Precisely what happened will never truly be known, but it is without doubt that foul play was the cause of death and consistent with being caused by the stone frog." The coroner said there was no recorded history of domestic violence or signs that Sabine acted in self-defense. After the hearing, Christopher, John Sabine's son from an earlier marriage, said, "She was an evil woman. She knew what she was doing. She told a pack of lies all her life. When I was told they had found my father's body, I couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen him for 27 years, and we didn't know if he was dead or alive. I tried to contact him many times, but he never replied. Now we know why." When Juliet Eden was offered £30 in 2014 to photograph a woman in the Welsh village of Beddoe, she wondered if it was worth it. The cash would just about cover petrol for the round trip from the town of Bridgone, where she lived at the time, 30 minutes away. But after speaking to the eccentric woman known locally as Mad Lee on the phone, she decided to go for it. Little did Juliet know her photos would go on to be featured under headlines, on news bulletins, and across the pages of magazines. That was because Mad Lee, real name Leanne Sabine, had murdered her husband. However, the crime was only discovered when she died aged 74 in 2015. 18 years after the killing took place. I've asked around, and people who knew Lee are convinced she wanted professional pictures taken because she wanted to look good when she was dead and infamous, Juliet tells Metro. Sabine's husband, John, a 67-year-old accountant, vanished from the couple's home at the Trem Yquem Flats in Beto in 1997. The disappearance wasn't reported to police as his wife claimed he had upped and left of his own accord. In reality, Sabine had savagely murdered John with an ornamental stone frog kept by their bed. She then wrapped his body in layers of plastic and shopping bags, essentially mummifying him, and hid him under a bed, later moving his remains to a garden shed, then to her attic. The pensioner then collected her dead husband's pension for the next 18 years. Sabine died of brain cancer on October 30th, 2015. A few weeks later, her friend Michelle was sorting through her belongings in the attic. There she came across a large package. Unaware of the contents, Michelle cut into it and found John's mummified corpse. Michelle later told the Mirror how she completely lost the plot due to the shocking discovery and, amid the confusion, was briefly arrested by police on suspicion of attempted murder. When the story reached the press, so did the countless photos of John's killer that Juliet had taken. In each one, the photographer recalls, Sabine was posing confidently as she stared down the lens, dressed like a 70s biker chick, in a black figure-hugging outfit. By the time news of the grisly find broke in 2015, Juliet had moved to Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. A hair salon owner in Wales called her to explain what had happened, leaving the photographers hocked and traumatized. Soon detectives from South Wales Police were visiting Juliet's home to scour her photos for any trace of the murder weapon. The injuries to John's skull, his death, was determined to be caused by blunt force trauma, matched perfectly to a frog-shaped ornament's protrusions. The frog was later found in a box of trinkets Sabine had left to her friend Michelle. Several of her photographs were taken in Sabine's bedroom. Here it is suspected John was stashed beneath the bed. Juliet believes this hiding place gave Sabine easy access to repeatedly wrap her dead husband's body in new layers of plastic. Detectives also took away memoirs Sabine had previously given Juliet to see if they contained a confession they did not, and to also swab the pages for fingerprints. Initially, Juliet declined to talk about her involvement with the killer and tried to move on from the experience. However, as the 10-year anniversary of Sabine's death approaches, she has now decided to tell the story in own words and reveal to the world the complexities of Mad Lee. Juliet had been 49 when she first met 72-year-old Sabine. They took photos at the older woman's flat in a local hair salon. At one point, Sabine read Juliet's tarot cards and predicted she would become famous, and that Juliet would write a book based on Sabine's life. On the day of the shoot, Juliet and her 21-year-old assistant Robert Asterisk had taken pictures of Sabine at a hair salon, then at her flat. In both locations, they were fed lie after lie. Sabine, in a peculiar accent which danced between Welsh and Kiwi, claimed she had been a former cabaret singer and a top fashion model who appeared in countless big magazines. Juliet recalls, "I like to think that people are honest, but the more Lee spoke, I thought, this can't be true. I just went along with things because she was interesting and work was quiet. It was more fun to sit there and be entertained by an eccentric old lady full of stories than it was to sit at home and watch telly." Lee was highly intelligent, very confident, and really quite mad, Juliet continues. She called everyone darling and hid her secrets behind a crazy, flamboyant demeanor. I always found that puzzling. If people have something they want to hide, usually they stay quiet and tuck themselves away in a corner. But Lee was the opposite. She hid in plain sight. Sabine's true past came out at the inquest into her death in 2015. It emerged she had been brought up in the Welsh village of Gelly, the daughter of Ronald, a coal miner, and Margaret, who abandoned the family when she was young. Initially, Juliet declined to talk about her involvement with the killer and tried to move on from the experience. However, as the 10-year anniversary of Sabine's death approaches, she has now decided to tell the story in own words and reveal to the world